Welcome to Fireside Giants, a featured podcast by Empire Sports Media. I'm your host, Alexander Wilson, and my co-hosts, Anthony Rivardo and Mike Iarapino. Give us a follow on Twitter if you haven't already, Alex Wilson ESM, Anthony_Rivardo, Mike_NYY, and make sure, if you're listening on YouTube and watching, to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. Awesome content coming out regularly. I know there's barely anything to talk about right now, but we're still punching out and pumping out great content on the safety duos. We just had a recent one on McKinney and Jabril Peppers and what they can look like in 2020. And if you're listening on iTunes, please give us a 5-star review. We would really appreciate your support, and we really are just trying to build something awesome and great for you guys to listen to and make this a little bit more enjoyable while we wait for quarantine to end, no matter where you are. But to start, how are you guys doing, Mike and Anthony?
Same as usual, I guess. Like, a lot of homework because it's finals week and some studying. But after next week, I'll be free of school, I think, and that's pretty good. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, I actually just finished my exams this week, so I'm pretty happy about that.
There you go.
Now I've got pretty much nothing to do in quarantine except more Warzone and Fortnite and all that video games.
Exactly. I know. I'm getting really good at video games now.
Yeah.
I've always been like weirdly good at FIFA. But now I'm getting better at Fortnite, and it's just kind of becoming a problem because these games are so addicting. If you're a listener, and you're playing these games, you know how addicting they can be. And for people that don't play and maybe have never played, this generation of gamers, and it's a whole like industry that you don't even know about. This like Twitch streaming and all these different cool things. There's so much going on, especially in quarantine. Like a lot of the players are doing virtual tournaments and Madden and MLB. They're doing MLB The Show. It's actually pretty interesting to see how they're adapting to this quarantine life and like what they're doing to supplement their time. But for us, we just got over the NFL draft and we put a ton of effort to live stream with John Hilliman and doing some really cool, innovative things in this space, that a lot of people haven't really done yet. Like, I think we were the first people to live stream with an actual player, which is awesome. And John is a really cool guy. If you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. But we're trying to do some more cool things like that and get more innovative in this space. So I'm really excited to dive into that. But today I just want to talk about Darnay Holmes, just to start off. And he was a 4th-round pick by the Giants in the most recent draft. Anthony really liked him, so I want to give Anthony the first chance to express his confidence in Holmes, and then I'll kind of dive into like all the stuff I've been looking into as well. But Anthony, like when they first picked Holmes, like what was your reaction to that?
Well, at first I wasn't fully familiar with him, but then I did my research, and what I really liked about him was that he was impressive at the Senior Bowl, and everybody complained about how bad the cornerbacks were at the Senior Bowl, except for Darnay Holmes. He was the only one that really stood out and impressed the scouts, and I think that obviously the Giants love to draft players that impress at the Senior Bowl, as we know, so that's probably where they became really familiar with Darnay Holmes. And I like that he's really open to this position change that he has to make, because he was an outside cornerback in college, but he tried the slot cornerback position at the Senior Bowl, did really well there, and is really excited to try that in the NFL. And I think he's going to be great at it because he's a very physical player. He is a little undersized, but that's why you can move him into the slot. But I think he's just got really good coverage skills and an awesome work ethic, which I know you're going to talk about, Alex.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mike, what do you think about him?
Yeah, I liked him a lot. As I said in previous videos and such, I tried to really take a look at the slot corner type guys, Terrell Burgess, and then Kayvon Wallace and Darnay Holmes, of course. And I think Darnay Holmes had so many good reviews about him, just like I'm sure you'll get to it later. But Chip Kelly had so many good things to say about him, his teammates, and his work ethic, and of course has a good story and all that stuff. And as Anthony said, I think has really, high potential to be a really good slot corner in the NFL one day. So I love that pick, and I was very happy when they made it.
Yeah, and when it happened, I was a little concerned because the Giants spent a lot of mid-round picks and even early-round picks in 2019 on the secondary, specifically the corner position with DeAndre Baker, Corey Ballantyne, Julian Love, and now they're going, with Holmes. And I'm like, wait a second, we need a center right now, and a lot of people were in the same boat. But Holmes is one of those guys that fills a position of need. And the craziest part about it is that a lot of people, rated him as their top nickel corner in the draft, but he's never played that position until the Senior Bowl. He was like, yeah, I don't have any experience there, but he looked fantastic, as Anthony said, in the Senior Bowl at the position. So people were like, okay, that transition makes a lot of sense for him. But he's only 5'10", 195 pounds, so he is undersized, at another point that Anthony made. But his story, after looking into it, and if you go on the Players Tribune, you can see the story he penned there. It is incredible. Knowing, so his father was also an NFL player previously, and they used to live a really good lifestyle, right? So they would go out to dinner and, all the time and have this, high quality of life. And all of a sudden it changed. They suddenly started to transition into more, fast food every day, like not the best quality of things. And he was like, okay, he didn't really notice it because he was like, oh, food's food, like whatever. And then suddenly his dad, was trying to supplement the loss of income by selling drugs. And he ended up getting shot 7 times. So I think it was 50 Cent also got shot like 8 times. Somehow, like, I can't comprehend the fact that he's survived being shot 7 times. And that was a big wake-up call for Darnay, who used that as a lesson, to gain kind of some sort of, just moral standing and just to appreciate life on a different level. And he was like, you know what, I'm going to raise my family over this. I don't want to, doom my family to this kind of life. And he graduated from UCLA in 3 years. His junior year was supposed to be his best one yet. He was the team captain and everything. An ankle injury he suffered really, really put him down, and he played through it. It was supposed to be a 6-week recovery time. He refused to do it, and he came back way too early. He really struggled because of it, and he still ended up being a 4th-round pick despite the injury, which was the major concern there. But to add on to his storyline, his mom got evicted while he was a junior in college, and he actually ended up, living or sleeping at the UCLA facilities, their football facilities. And, he slept with like padded, pillows and blankets just stacked up. And, so his mom could go to his apartment, who was living with Darnay's roommate, and sleep in his bed. So like he gave up, his own apartment for his mom and then slept in the UCLA football facilities just to, take care of his family. And that just tells you what kind of guy he is. And he graduated in one, less year than a normal person would. And he was a student athlete. He played on the football team and was the team captain. Like this guy is one of the hardest working people. Chris Petit, the New York Giants' top scout, he's been there for 15 years, said that this is the hardest working young man I have ever seen. That is a big thing to say from a scout for the New York Giants over a 15-year period. Knowing that about Holmes, I was like, okay, this kid is a special talent. He's a special person. And he really wants to bring the best out of himself. And he's willing to do whatever it takes. Like Anthony, you said it. He's willing to make the transition. He's happy about it. He's like, whatever I can do, I'm going to bring the Giants above average wherever I can. And I'm really excited to see what he can do. Holmes seems like a really physical player despite his undersized frame. He's strong off the line of scrimmage. He can mirror talent, wide receivers across the board. And I think that he's going to be a really good player for the Giants moving forward, especially at that slot position where they had Grant Haley and Julian Love and Corey Ballantyne. They're not the best players, and I think Holmes just really, really stands out. But after hearing that story, his background, like, what are you guys thinking about, what he offers to the team aside from tangible traits like those just mentality, those intangibles?
I think, I don't know, I really love the story because it just shows he can really overcome adversity and he can be put down and rise above and, just he's hungry. He has the drive to better himself and be the best that he possibly can, which is something that, is really valuable for NFL players. A lot of these young players, you could say some of them don't really seem like they want to get better week in and week out, but it sounds like Darnay Holmes is going to be that player that just wants to improve, get in the film room, find his weaknesses and fix them instantly and just get better and improve. And I really love that about him. I think that you combine that with the talent that he already has, and I really do think that he can be a day one starter at slot cornerback position. I think the other guys that you mentioned, Grant Haley, Corey Ballantyne, they do have a role on this team, and I think that in certain defensive packages, they'll be on the field and Holmes won't, and they'll be able to mix them in if Patrick Graham is as smart as I'm giving him credit for. So I think they've got a role. I don't think that it's necessarily like they're being replaced, but I just think that Holmes is going to be instantly the guy that we want there, and he's just going to prove it with his work ethic. He's going to get better, and I just think that he's going to be the guy at that slot cornerback position for a long time.
Yeah, that's what's so tough about this entire draft process is you can have guys that in college put up numbers and do great things, but then they don't have that work ethic that once they get to that next level, it's kind of like their development just stops. And it happens to guys like Jamarcus Russell comes to mind. I'm sure there's many others.
Mhm.
And you can be gifted all this God given ability and stuff like that, but a guy like Darnay Holmes, you can tell just really wants to work at it and just really give back for his family. I mean, just make so many sacrifices, as you said, for his mom and stuff like that. So I have no concerns about him whatsoever. If he doesn't pan out in the NFL, it's not because he didn't try hard enough. It would be for some other reasons. You know what I mean? So at least we know that as fans.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like Anthony, like you said with Grant Haley, I think that the Giants might try to do something like this in the earlier portion of the year to get Holmes on the field. Because I think, they really want to develop these guys quickly. The point of this entire rebuild is they want to get talented players into positions of importance quickly so they can actually develop and be a part of the team moving forward. A player like Grant Haley, I can see playing early downs in the slot position, because he's really good against the run, but he's terrible in coverage. So if you know that the probability that a team is going to run earlier on in a given drive or in a given set of 4 plays, you want to have a player that can stop the run, on the field. So Haley fits that mold, but I think on third downs, like even second and third downs when the probability of passing is higher, you want a guy like Holmes on the field, playing that slot position. And the Giants have a really, really, really hard schedule this year. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I've looked at it multiple times and I don't even know if they can scrape 5 wins out of that. Of course teams flounder and they degrade from year to year, but their schedule is really difficult and the majority of those teams are improving and not, getting worse. So I'm really interested to see, how they can scrape together a few wins this year against such talented teams. But the offense is, where I'm looking to right now for the Giants to kind of take over. We saw the Chiefs and what they do on offense, and they supplement a poor defense at times with just unlimited scoring ability. And I don't know, like Anthony, are you seeing like this offense really taking hold of games? And Mike too, are you guys like seeing Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley taking over games and really just like helping the defense like at this point moving forward?
I think they will better than they did last year. But I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a dominant offense. I still think that they're missing a piece, and I think that's like that number 1 wide receiver. I know there's a chance that Darius Slayton could emerge into that role, develop, and become a primary receiver, but I think that the Giants have like 3 solid number 2 receivers on their roster, but not like one solid number 1 receiver that you can rely on who can draw double teams and change the way the defense lines up. And a good comparison and anecdote that I can bring up is that 2008 season with Plaxico Burress, right? We were basically unstoppable with Burress on the field. And then the incident happened. He shot himself in the leg. And the offense basically just turned out terrible. There was nobody to make a threat over the top. And having Plaxico not be there on the field really just... It put so much pressure on Eli. He didn't have any dominant receiver to get open. It was, I think, Steve Smith, Dominic Hickson, and Amani Toomer. And Toomer was pretty old at that point. So they were all solid number 2 receivers, but none of them were like a solid number 1 receiver. And that's kind of what I see in the Giants receiving core right now. So I think there's going to be times in the season where the Giants get stuck and they're not able to throw the ball as efficiently as we would want them to. And it's hard to just rely on the running game. As talented as Saquon is in 2020, it's a passing league, and I don't think that we've necessarily got that number 1 receiver that we need. And I'm hoping that somehow, since we did build through the line these past 2 years, the defensive line and now the offensive line, we'll be able to have some luxury picks, like one of our viewers commented on the draft night, coming up, and hopefully maybe next year we can land one of those stud wide receivers, maybe Jamar Chase. I mean, that would be pretty cool. So that's kind of my really early pipe dream heading into this year and the draft following.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, as Alex brought up before, this question, it's like the Giants have had this problem for so many years now. I feel like it's over 5, 6, 7 years of the defense just being on the field too much. Like I remember back in the days when Odell first got in the league, because I loved watching him, and I was like kind of annoyed because he was never on the field because it was 3 and out, and then like the Giants defense is on the field for like 8, 9, 10 minutes a quarter, and it's just like puts so much strain on your defense. And the Giants defense is in the middle of this decade, I should say, or last decade, like 2014, 2015, they were really bad. So like to have those guys in the field more than you'd want is not a good thing. But if the Giants can just find ways to string, long drives and stuff like that, you don't have to score touchdowns on all of them. I don't expect them to be like the Kansas City Chiefs, but if they can stay on the field longer, it'll help their defense so much. Like it doesn't matter about the talent at that point. If you keep your defense off the field, you can kind of disguise their, deficiencies and stuff like that. So it really depends. The Giants have an offense that is so just set up to be on the field for a long time. You have a really good offensive line, which we do think they have now, probably one of the top 15, maybe top 10 offensive lines in football. Best running back in football in my mind, Saquon Barkley, and a quarterback like Daniel Jones, who probably is better than just a game manager. You have all those things going for you. You have good possession receivers, guys like Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard that are good at getting open, and a guy like Darius Slayton over the top. There's so many opportunities for this team to stay on the field. They just have to make it work. And if the offense can stay on the field, then I think it makes the defense a lot better. It's just how it works.
Absolutely. And, I'm looking at the Carolina Panthers, and I'm seeing, Christian McCaffrey, right? He dominates. But then you realize that the Panthers don't really have a number one receiver. They have Curtis Samuel, and he's decent, but they don't have that guy who's going to really take over, like you guys were mentioning. Plaxico did and Odell did. And this lackluster defense problem has been really, really problematic for me and all of us to watch over the past few years. And like reflecting on 2016, for example, Jerry Reese went out and he was like, okay, we don't have a defense. We have all this money. He spent all of it on 5-year contracts with backloaded deals. So that's why we've really been screwed with the cap recently. Like Janoris Jenkins' deal, like all these different things have been, piling up. And Gettleman was forced to trade away a lot of these pieces, Damon Harrison, Olivier Vernon, all these guys. He had to get rid of them. He was like, this guy really screwed your cap situation. It's like a company that has a bad financial officer. Like, you're really just bound for failure. And that's kind of what we've been going through now, the fixing and solving of these problems. The worst one that we've seen Gettleman go through is Nate Solder. And luckily for him, very luckily for him, it wasn't, the team was rebuilding. So that contract in the grand scheme of things will be looked back on and be like, okay, whatever. The team was going to lose anyway. We were rebuilding. We had all of these young players. And next season, his dead cap drops to 6.5, and they're going to cut him. Like, don't get me wrong right now. They're going to keep him this year because they need to have depth at right tackle and to make sure that Pert develops appropriately. But they're going to cut him next year. If they keep him, he's going to count $20.5 million against the cap. And if they cut him, he'll only count 6.5. And they can allocate that extra $14 million really toward any position of need, towards pass rusher. They could get an not elite pass rusher, but they can, compile some of their funds and really go after, an elite player to
Yannick Ngakoue next year.
That's what I'm saying. They didn't need to trade. But that's a great point, Mike, because they didn't need to trade for a guy this year. They're not going to win a Super Bowl this year. But after a year of developing Andrew Thomas, Darnay Holmes, Matt Pert, and all the, Shane Lemieux, all these guys developing, they're going to look at next year and be like, okay, we have all this cash, Solder's off the books, like some other dead cap hits. And we still have Saquon and Daniel Jones on rookie deals, our two best players, arguably. And now we can go out and get a guy like Yannick, who they wanted a first-round pick for. It's ridiculous. So they're making smart decisions right now. And now that we can compare them to the bad decisions that Jerry Reese made towards the end of his tenure, now we can say we know what good decisions look like. And like Mike was saying on Twitter last week, Joe Judge has a freaking hand in this. Don't get it wrong. He is there and he's helping make these decisions, and he's bringing another mentality toward the Giants right now. This offseason has been a lot different than we've seen with Shermer or any of them. And do you guys think, or do you guys agree that Joe Judge is making a big difference here?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think Joe Judge has really just changed the Giants, man. I think he's brought in a complete new mindset, complete new valuation and evaluation of players, and positional value has become a lot more important in the new regime, I think, under Joe Judge. I think, over the past 2 years, that's really been our complaint about Dave Gettleman, but it looks like he's really changed his philosophy now that he has Joe Judge with him. And I think if there's one move that you could say was the best that the Giants made throughout the entire offseason, so far to me, it's the hiring of Joe Judge, and it's not even close.
I can agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I do think he has a hand in this for sure. I mean, I don't think this is 100% Gettleman or 100% Abrams or somebody else. I think everyone has a say in it, but Joe Judge definitely, I feel like, has the final say. There's no way of me knowing that, but just based on the way things have gone this offseason, it just feels so much different. It's pretty like refreshing to me. But one thing that like stood out to me, and I have no idea how this works, so you guys can try to maybe pitch in here, but the whole Markus Golden contract thing, like what is this? Like if the Giants, like a team can't offer him a certain amount of money or some crazy thing, like I've never heard of this before. Now Joe Judge is in the building and the Giants are just doing this weird contract thing that definitely benefits their team for Markus Golden if no other team wants to sign him.
And the last team that did that was the Patriots with LeGarrette Blount. So obviously it was a Joe Judge thing.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. But Mike, I want to let you get into your weakness, like what spot, because, Anthony, we talked about yours a little bit, just the wide receiver position. I don't know if you want to go into it more, but I want to give Mike a chance to kind of dive into his weak spot and like why he believes that's something the Giants need to be allocating resources or focusing on.
All right, so I'm going to pick inside linebacker. I think we all know this. We had the people that wanted Isaiah Simmons, and I understand why. So now they have Blake Martinez, David Mayo, Ryan Conley, my boy Tay Crowder, TJ Brunson, and just some other people. Maybe Cam Brown if he plays inside. I'm not sure about that one yet.
I think
he will. Yeah, I probably. Yeah, good chance he will.
He's not an OLB. He's not a pass rusher, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he's a project, though. I don't think, I don't expect him to come in next year, obviously, and just rack up like 80 to 100 tackles. You know what I mean? So,
no way. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so, I mean, these guys definitely are going to have – they're going to have success playing the run. I think David Mayo's all right at that. Blake Martinez has been, pretty good at tackling, obviously, and Ryan Conley can do that for sure. My issue, of course, though, is coverage. But the Giants do have a lot of guys in the secondary that can cover these running backs and tight ends, so that does make it a little better. But anytime you ask Blake Martinez or David Mayo or Ryan Conley to guard a tight end, running back, even a slot wide receiver one-on-one, that might be an issue for the Giants. So that's the one thing I have concern about. I like Martinez because he's durable. He's not, I think he's a bit of an overrated player, obviously, as Anthony would agree probably. But, David Mayo, another guy that really can't cover. And Ryan Conley, I have not seen enough yet that he's going to be this great coverage guy. So that's an issue for me. I do think Tay Crowder has the tools to do it. We'll see if he actually gets on the field. But in terms of covering these guys, I kind of have my concerns for inside linebacker.
I do agree with you to an extent, but I want to counterpoint real quickly because that was something that obviously I discussed a lot with the whole Blake Martinez signing. I was really upset because they didn't get a coverage linebacker, but I think now that we have Jabril Peppers, Xavier McKinney, and Julian Love, it should kind of counteract that flaw in the defense. So if Patrick Graham is as smart as I keep giving him credit for and he can scheme the defense the right way, it shouldn't really be too big of a problem, but it definitely is like a flaw on the roster.
Right. I agree.
And here's my concern though. Like Patrick Graham is a good defensive coordinator, but his defense last year with Miami Dolphins was awful. And mainly because they were super young, super inexperienced, and overall they just kind of sucked. Like the players sucked. After they got rid of Minka Fitzpatrick, they were garbage. And all around, like his scheme was too complicated for them to understand at that level just yet. No, I think he only spent one season there. Am I right?
Yeah.
He was with Green Bay in 2018. So now he's coming to the Giants. Now the Giants defenders need to learn an entire new playbook aside from Kyler Fackrell and Blake Martinez. So those two guys know his defense and they're going to help everybody else also understand it. But according to the inside linebacker position, I think Ryan Conley, they have hopes for him there, and I think Cam Brown's also going to slide in there because it seems like the Giants' upper management did not like the depth they had at the position, which is why they allocated Tay Crowder, T.J. Brunson, Cam Brown. They're all slotting these guys in there and like hoping one of them pans out. If you can put 4 players in there with potential, the probability is that one of them will be at least average, right?
It's
and like
smart,
if you have an average player, yeah, exactly. It's smart mathematically, which is where these analytics guys in the back room are coming into play. And we can hope at least. But, I'm looking at, like you said, Anthony, McKinney and Jabril Peppers. One thing that I noticed about Patrick Graham is that he uses man coverage like 50% of the time. And he uses zero man and cover one a lot. So like he's really it's more than the average team. So he's really using man coverage in these areas, which makes me think tight ends are really going to be allocated toward McKinney and Jabril Peppers. I think Peppers mainly. I think the inside linebacker is really going to be covering and spying on the quarterback and covering the running back on the flat. That's what I think they're going to do. Just because, like you said, I don't really trust the talent we have there to cover. And Blake Martinez is more of a middle linebacker that's going to soak up blocks and soak up tacklers to mitigate big plays. He will drop into zone coverage, but he did say when he was on Green Bay, and Anthony, I know you hate him in coverage, justifiably so, looking at his tape. But he also said that he was really playing like a mixture of zone and man, and a lot of those things that he did wrong was because he was in the right positioning, but he wasn't playing full man. He wasn't really tracking them. He was supposed to be covering a certain zone, and they were leaving his zone, and he was trailing behind them because of it. So that was kind of where those problems were occurring. But I really think Patrick Graham's defense is good. I just don't think it's going to look as good as we hope in year one. I think year two, like Joe Judge and Patrick Graham will be there for more than 1 year for sure. And I think Graham specifically, that defense is going to need more than a season to really grasp all of the things he does. He likes to blitz a lot and fake blitzes. It's very complicated. And these young players are going to need time to develop and grow into that role. But I like where they're going with the ideas. Like Betcher's defense was super, super complicated as well. But do you guys like the signing of Patrick Graham, like based on the things that you've heard?
I do. I kind of love it. I really love that he loves man coverage and he loves to blitz, and he's really creative with the way that he blitzes, because I think now when you look at the team and you see Jabril Peppers and Xavier McKinney and Julian Love, they're all really versatile. They have the ability to play deep, play in the box, and line up all over the defense. And McKinney is actually a really good blitzer, and I expect him to get in the backfield a lot on blitzes in this Patrick Graham scheme. And I'm really excited to see how he schemes up the pressure, because we really don't have that dominant pass rusher on this roster. But you can definitely scheme together pressures, and I think that's what Patrick Graham is going to do.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the whole disguising thing. It's like, I don't know how it's going to play out. That's like a wait and see type thing. But the Giants do play some young quarterbacks this year. I'm looking at the schedule now. Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield. You have whoever the Chargers are putting out there. It could be Herbert. I have no idea. So they are playing some here. They are playing some younger quarterbacks, and that definitely could benefit the Giants defense. But it is a wait and see process. I like what he brings to the table. So as long as the Giants defense can comprehend this, and I'm not talking to a guy like DeAndre Baker specifically, maybe I am, you have to understand the playbook, obviously, and hopefully they can just make the most out of it.
Right. And I think Baker is actually a good point there, because Betcher used him a lot in zone off-ball coverage in 2019, and he struggled a lot because of it. He is known as a man press corner, and that is what Patrick Graham is going to utilize him as. And then you have a guy like James Bradbury who actually can move into slot. He will match opposing number one. So, you remember when OBJ would kind of fall into that slot role on one side and he would do those slants across the middle? He follows those kind of receivers. He doesn't leave it up to a guy like Darnay Holmes to face off against OBJ, and you're like, okay, this is not good. But Bradbury will move into that slot position. He's very diverse and versatile in that way, which I really like, because that way they can keep their best player on the opposing offense's best player, or best receiver rather. You really want to match up your guys appropriately here. And Baker playing more man coverage is going to help him so much. And I think we're going to see a different version of him in 2020 because of it. And that experience he got in zone is good, though. It's good that he learned, why he was getting beat there. Just got a lot of experience in that scheme and that set to move forward and kind of build off of. But the next thing I want to talk about really is my weakness, and that is the pass rush. And before I really dive into what I want to talk about, what do you guys think about the pass rush and Markus Golden potentially returning? It seems like he's going to be with the Giants in 2020.
Well, like I said, I think the pass rush is going to come from the scheme and the way that Patrick Graham schemes the pressures together with the blitzes. But in terms of Markus Golden, I'm pretty excited if that weird contract thing they did works out and no other team makes him an offer and he does come back. I mean, that's really like a steal for the Giants. I do, in a way, feel bad for Markus Golden because he really does deserve to get paid. But if this happens, he's not really going to. He's just going to get a cheap deal with the Giants.
I think.
Yeah. So, but he was he was set to get like 13 million at the start of free agency, and it just never happened. So I do feel bad for him in a way, but at the same time, it is $5 million, but it's a bargain for the Giants at that point. So I'd be really excited about it. Yep.
Yeah, I would take him for sure. Yeah, I mean, I taking Markus Golden on a bargain of a contract is great. I do feel bad for him as a person because I did want him to make a lot of money this year.
Right.
And he's probably, 29 years old now, so I don't know if he'll have another chance at a big contract. But in terms of the pass rush, I'm not as concerned, I feel like, as most people, because I have high hopes for Kyler Fackrell. I mean, I watched him back in 2018 and saw he did a lot of good things. And if he is giving a starting worth of snaps, I feel like he can put up some really good numbers and be effective. And then, of course, I have high hopes for O'Shea and Zimenez as well. So I know I'm kind of just like hoping for things to happen here, but I like the upside of these guys. Even Lorenzo Carter's not a bad backup, assuming he is the backup. So, there's guys like that. And of course, adding Markus Golden here would be great. It just depends what the contract situation is.
Right, and I want to kind of hit on each player on that offensive line just really quickly. You mentioned O'Shea and Zimenez. I am really big on him. 45% of snaps last year, 4.5 sacks. If you double that, that's a pretty good number. It's 9 sacks on the year, and expecting him to grow a little bit because of the developmental process. We can hope that he actually has a better season than his rookie year, and he actually becomes a featured player on the Giants. Outside linebacker rotation. Looking at Kyler Fackrell, 10.5 sacks in 2018. He's a quality player, and Patrick Graham knows how to unlock his talent. I think it's kind of like a similar to Markus Golden last year. No one really expected him to have 10 sacks, but he did. And I think Fackrell is going to be a decent player for the Giants. But I wouldn't expect him to be like go above and beyond, but I think he'll be a little bit better than we think. As for Dexter Lawrence, I love that guy. Big Dexy, big sexy. I love him. And I think he is going to really have a fantastic year too, especially alongside Dalvin Tomlinson and Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams, I wrote an article the other day. If you haven't checked it out, you probably should, detailing how he actually helped all of the interior linemen improve once he arrived. Dalvin Tomlinson, his stats exploded after LW was traded for. And he had his best season yet. He was on pace for maybe half of what he actually ended up. His stats more than doubled after that second portion of the year. So I'm really excited to see what those two guys can do. And then you have Dexter Lawrence, who has a year under his belt, huge, really athletic. He's also going to be very talented. And then bringing back Markus Golden only helps them because he's already developed some sort of chemistry and he knows that defense a little bit. So I'm pretty excited about this unit. I think it's going to be a lot better than we think it is, especially with Markus coming back. Lorenzo Carter, I agree, is more of a rotational depth piece at this point, but you can't rule him out. He had a really good game against New England. I think he had 2 sacks in the game and a forced fumble. So I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's definitely still a weakness. I would consider it a weakness, but I wouldn't go too far to say that, they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay in 2020. And they're really just buying time so they have enough money to sign an elite guy like Yannick Ngakoue or draft somebody next year. Who knows? But I think this is a pretty decent unit despite our, lack of outside linebackers. We know Gettleman really likes to build in the interior and have big guys in the middle who can put pressure on the quarterback and close the pocket quickly. And that's where the focus is. You can't ignore those guys when thinking about a pass rush because they can, put pressure as well. But that's kind of where I want to end today. I just want to give you guys the last say, Anthony or Mike, if you have anything to say about the offensive or rather the defensive front.
I mean, I think it's the strongest part of this roster. I think it's what Dave Gettleman has obviously invested a lot into the defensive line, and that's why it's the strongest part of the roster, and it should really open up the defense in a way and open up that pass rush because when you got Leonard Williams or Dexter Lawrence or Dalvin Tomlinson or all three of them drawing double teams even at the same time, yeah, you're going to have some free rushers off the edge or from those safety blitzes that we talked about earlier. So I definitely do like the way that he constructed that defensive line, and I think that it really will open up the rest of the defense for success.
Yeah, they should be very stout against the run next year, and it's going to make Blake Martinez's numbers look even better because they'll have a lot of free rushes at whoever's running up the middle. So, I think last year, I'm not sure what the numbers are off the top of my head, but I think once Leonard Williams came here, the yards per carry against the Giants went down by a full yard. So he definitely made an impact to Dalvin Tomlinson as well, even Dexter Lawrence, and those guys should get better. No one's old there. I mean, they're all in their mid-20s. I know Dexter Lawrence is in his lower 20s. So those guys should all get better next year. It's very exciting, and I think the Giants will be a really good team against the run next year, hopefully.
I agree. I think the defense as a whole will improve, and that's really what we're looking for. They were so bad last year, And I would be very surprised if we didn't see a significant improvement in year 2 for a lot of these players. But I just want to thank everybody who tuned in for Fireside Giants today. And I hope everyone is safe and healthy out there. I know we're kind of moving through this at a very slow, sloth-like pace, but we are doing this together. And, I want to know everyone that you guys are on my mind, and I hope everyone's safe and healthy. And make sure to leave a comment below. We really want to talk to you guys, especially on YouTube, where we have a cool community building. If you haven't seen it yet, please go over there and subscribe. We have awesome people there, and a really positive atmosphere, which is what you lack sometimes on Twitter and other platforms. Very hostile sometimes, but for whatever reason, YouTube seems to be like a positive place to voice your opinion and not get torched. So I really thank everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys next time.